Ladies and gentlemen, we are delighted to welcome you all here this morning to our panel entitled Migrant Smuggling in Turkey, the Other Side of the Refugee Crisis. Desperate people keep dying at sea. Only a couple of days ago, 700 people drowned along the coastline of North Africa. Humanity continues confronting with the horrors of its refugee crisis. And the human traffickers' dark activities go on unabated. In this panel today, we are going to take up this grim subject and we will discuss it within the context of migrant smuggling in Turkey. This is, of course, the fourth of the panel series that USAK has recently launched on the issues of crucial importance for the region and the wider zone. Following the Arab uprisings, the Syrian crisis, the consequence of which transcend the borders of many countries, and Ankara's open-door policies for refugees, which still falls short of employing effective strategies of integration, have together, sadly, made Turkey one of the most important international hubs for migrant smuggling. As Turkey has always been a transit country on the route to Europe, this profitable green business existed in the country long before the Syrian crisis. However, shifting balances of the conflict in the Middle East have brought about an increase in the mixed migration flows that extend from Turkey all the way to Europe. As a result of the current refugee crisis, migrant smuggling, which is one of the main motivators of irregular migration, is experiencing a frightening golden age. Now, with the Turkey-EU Joint Action Plan, both sides committed full-fledged combating against migrant smuggling. This panel will give us the opportunity to have a follow-up discussion on the findings of our latest report, which is also titled Sailing with Our Panel. Migrant smuggling in Turkey, the other side of the refugee crisis. In light of these points, our distinguished experts will assess and discuss different dimensions of human smuggling. So today, Professor Dr. Nilüfer Narlı, Chair of Sociology Department at Bahçeşehir University, will moderate the panel. I would like to take this opportunity to express a warm welcome to Professor Dr. Narlı and thank her for accepting our invitation to join us today. But certainly she will not only moderate, but also share with us her valuable insight into migrant smuggling. Associate Professor Oğuzhan Ömer Demir, the Director of Center for Migration Studies at Global Policy and Strategy Institute, will inform us about migrant smuggling business in Turkey, magnitude of the problem, structures of smuggling groups, and organizations and modus operandi of smugglers. After Mr. Demir, Assistant Professor Ayşem Biriz Karaçay from the Istanbul Commerce University, Department of Political Science and International Relations, will talk about the roots and the hubs in the human smuggling network and the changes occurred with the Syrian crisis. After Ms. Karaçay, Ms. Meltem Hamid, Senior Project Expert at IOM, Turkey, will provide us with IOM's approach and strategy on countering migrant smuggling. Although irregular migration and migrant smuggling have come to occupy a central place in Turkish-EU relations since the relatively recent outbreak of the Syrian civil war, it should be recognized that both of these issues have actually long been a component of Turkey's difficulties in accessing to the European Union. In this regard, our expert on migration and head of USAK Center for Social Studies, Ms. Elif Özmenek-Çarmıklı, will draw a picture of combating migrant smuggling from the perspective of the EU-Turkey joint action. After the work of our experts, the panel will continue a Q&A session in which we will be happy to take your inquiries and comments. So I wish you all a very fruitful discussion that will be of great benefit to us all. Thank you very much. So the floor is for Professor.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, His Excellency Mr. Sandberg, the President of USAK. And first of all, I'd like to thank USAK for inviting me to such an important event. And it's really my privilege and honor to chair this session. And the issue of human smuggling is a very important issue, and many academics have been studying this problem. Smuggling human beings, smuggling migrants, you move people for the sake of profit, and there is a big risk, and sometimes the risk is higher for the smuggled people. The risk is maybe lower for the smugglers. Human smuggling is different from smuggling weapons, smuggling maybe narcotics, because in the case of smuggling weapons and narcotics, the good must be delivered to the destination. Otherwise, the person, the smuggler cannot get the money. But in the case of smuggling human beings, migrants, sometimes the smugglers let them to die in the sea, to perish in the containers. They don't need to deliver the good, this is the human being, to the destination. And it is a dark business, but there is a huge amount of money. And sometimes there are small criminal networks, individuals are organizing the human smuggling, or there are big criminal networks with international connections, and our experts are going to discuss this. So first, I'd like to invite the speakers to the panel, and then the first speaker is Associate Professor Dr. Oğuzhan Ömer Demir, and the title is Migrant Smuggling Business in Turkey. Professor Oğuzhan Ömer Demir, he's from the Global Policy and Strategy Institute. He's the director of Center for Migration Studies. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Professor Narla. And thanks for inviting us to this timely event. Thanks to USAK for organizing such an important panel today. I would like to talk about, very briefly, about the smuggling business in Turkey, migrant smuggling business in Turkey, based on field research findings before and after the Syrian crisis. Migrant smuggling has become one of the most important major types of transnational organized crime in the last 2-3 decades. Thousands of people are facilitated by migrant smuggling to be transported to the wealthy countries of the West. Turkey, between the East and West, has become a geographically convenient place for transit migration. The first major appearance of migrant smugglers in Turkey was on the last day of 1997, in which a cargo ship called Ararat set off from Turkey's coastline and arrived in Italian coast with over 800 irregular immigrants. Since then, migrant smuggling has been occupying Turkish agenda with regards to migration and security item. Migrant smuggling is usually carried out by multinational networks and by citizens of the origin, transit and destination countries. Of course, Turks dominate this business in Turkey, but they are also participated with other smugglers from Iraq, Iran, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Ukraine, Palestine, Syria, Bangladesh and Greece. Smuggling organizations, smuggling networks operate in a similar way to multinational corporations. Companies have part-time and full-time employees who have various responsibilities such as administration, logistics, production, and so on. All companies need marketing for their products and services. They have customers, and customers make choices from among a range of service providers. Choices are usually made according to the quality and the price of the service and the product. The way transnational migrant smugglers operate and conduct their illegal business can be characterized exactly like this. There are different roles and responsibilities within a smuggling business, and roles vary according to the conditions and types of borders and border crossings. There are two major divisions according to our findings from field research within a smuggling network. These are the planners and the executors. The planners are those who have the capital, adequate connections both within and across countries, and have years of smuggling experience. They do not usually show up personally in the field, though they are well known by other transnational networks outside Turkey. Included in the group are intermediaries, organizers, and depositories. These people take part in the arrangement of secure international transportation and in-country travel, deal with various business owners in order to execute local plans, often connecting local business owners with each other, and resolving problems that may occur at each stage of the irregular immigration passage. Executors are those who physically work in the field. Their major tasks include facilitating border crossings, providing shelters, safe houses, food and transportation within and across the country, all the while securing transfers and accommodation. These people are at the highest risk. Executors include transporters, guides, escorts, drivers, safe house owners, scouts, mountaineers, sea captains, boatmen, as well as public officials, if available any. There is no hierarchy between the planners and executors. Communications between the planners and executors are very limited. The nexus between the two groups can be similar to a relationship between the contractors and subcontractors. They do not act like mafia groups because of the inherent nature of their business. Migrant smugglers rarely use violence. They do not carry guns and do not turn to coercion as a means of controlling immigrants. Immigrants are like their customers. The more customers are satisfied with the service they receive, the more likely organizers are to be given new contracts from intermediaries. The number of people in a smuggling network is changeable depending upon capital, area of influence, networks and opportunities. Approximately 9 people are involved in a typical migrant smuggling network, ranging from 3 people to 20 persons. Migrant smugglers in Turkey have links with many countries, especially with major source, transit and destination countries. Having strong networks is more important than having special abilities in this business. Probably the most important part of this matter is the fact that this is a lucrative business that criminal groups can afford to ignore. Based on the prices of travels facilitated by smugglers, the minimum income generated by smuggling groups could be estimated around $1 million in Turkey. That was before the Syrian crisis. So, how does the Syrian crisis affect the smuggling business in Turkey? It is apparent that it has been making a significant impact on the smuggling business in Turkey. Now Turkey is hosting over 2.7 million refugees, Syrian refugees, and many of them feel hopeless about their future. about the ongoing civil war and have ceased to expect an immediate resolution in their countries. As a result, hundreds of thousands of them, particularly during the last year, left Turkey to reach a Western European country. Among 1 million irregular immigrants and refugees who have reached Europe last year, half of them were the Syrian refugees. Although smuggling business is an underground sector, the recent refugee crisis has interestingly changed the smugglers' modus operandi. Contrary to past trends and smuggling characteristics, smugglers can now be found easily. In the last 2-3 years, many journalists and reporters documented the role of smugglers and even broadcasted live smuggling activities. Investigative journalists have reached smuggling groups that specialize in false and forged documents. Smugglers can be found through social media outlets such as Facebook, WhatsApp, and others, where they easily advertise themselves. Another important change in the modus operandi is on the use of vehicles and vessels. Particularly in the past, smugglers preferred large vessels or fishing boats for smuggling activities, while today's smugglers particularly use inflatable boats and cheaper life jackets that have become the symbols of current smuggling activities. Another important trend in this business has been the involvement of new smugglers, Syrian smugglers. Official statistics show that the number of arrested Syrian migrant smugglers increased 8 times in 2014 compared to the previous year. Turkish smugglers enjoy working with their foreign counterparts since they can communicate with their nationals easier, and in case of any conflicts, they are better at resolving problems. Therefore, Syrian smugglers became indispensable and invaluable partners in this business. Interestingly, current smuggling problem is perceived to be limited to Syrian refugees, but it is not true. It is not an exact case. However, half of the smuggled people are Syrian refugees, but the other half are not. There are still people arriving in Turkey from the east and the south, particularly from Afghanistan, Pakistan, Somalia, Burma, Iran, and Eritrea with the help of smugglers. They also have hopes, like Syrian refugees, to be settled in a European country and passing through irregular ways to Europe. The final and probably the most important point that I can make is on the new economy of smuggling. Based on new figures of smuggling people and smugglers, we can speculate that the smuggling business in Turkey have already reached an economy around $3 billion. For this reason, despite the coordinated efforts of Turkish and European authorities, I believe that the smugglers will not give up this lucrative business sector and try for every alternative to continue making their money. Thank you very much.
Professor Oğuzhan, thank you very much for your very enlightening speech. I really learned a lot, especially about the economy. You know, if I summarize your speech, I should say that the increase in the number of Syrian smugglers show that migrants may become smugglers themselves in the course of their journey towards the destination country. They gain experience, unfortunately. And then, so when we look at the smuggling network, the second point in your presentation, there is a type of enterprise model with large number of smaller, flexible criminal groups or individuals that interact if it is necessary. And then you mentioned about the risk gap between the planners and then the executioners, captains, and then the people who accompany the migrants. And that Syrian crisis is really important. It's important for political scientists, international studies, but also it has created new risks for the organized crime. And thank you very much for your presentation. And now I will invite the second speaker. is Assistant Professor Ayşem Deniz Karaçay from Istanbul Commerce University, Department of Political Science and International Relations. The title of her speech is IOM's Approach and Strategy, Routes or Hubs in Human Smuggling Networks. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Professor Nardi. I also would like to start my presentation by thanking to all organizers of the panel. I'm really very glad to be here. It's really a big honor for me to be here. Thank you. And I would also like to mention that the difference between Istanbul and Ankara, here I again feel the same atmosphere. Ankara is really different than Istanbul. Hope that it will create a really very fruitful discussion. Let's start my presentation. The Arab Spring and the Syrian conflict have significantly contributed to the sharp increase of migration to Europe. In 2014, most of the migrants and refugees have traveled on smugglers' boats departing from Libya, Tunisia, and/or Egypt to reach to Italy. This extremely dangerous central Mediterranean route dominated flows during 2014. 1 year later, coming to 2015, the track shifted from the central Mediterranean route towards the eastern Mediterranean route. In 2015, migration and refugee movements, as well as smuggling services in the Mediterranean region, have gained unprecedented momentum. The shift from a long and extremely perilous central Mediterranean route to a shorter and relatively safer crossing from Turkey and Greece has allowed a much larger number of migrants and refugees, who are mostly Syrian, to reach the European external borders. So in the 2014, we have the migration route from which is called Central Mediterranean, and then in 2015, this route was shifted from the Central Mediterranean towards the Eastern Mediterranean route. With the extraordinary volumes of new arrivals, even the best prepared European countries have reached a breaking point in their ability to meet EU standards. Despite the fact that smuggling of humans has attracted great media and political attention over the last 2 decades, great confusion still prevails about what human smuggling is, and further to this, the policy measures that designed to combat human smuggling have clearly created unintended side effects. This is what I would like to highlight, because people mostly are talking about migrant smuggling. I would like to mention this, human smuggling, and people are always talking that it's an organized, transnational organized crime, and it's really a criminal organization. But I, on the contrary, stated that there are different types of organizations network in human smuggling, and putting it like a criminal organization can be disputed and discussed with regard to the field work results. Yeah. In order to understand diversity that exists within the smuggling industry and its unintended consequences tied to border controls, we clearly need to expose new academic as well as political debates on this subject. First of all, let me say that despite being framed as a recent phenomenon, human smuggling practices have existed for a long time. It's often forgotten that boat migration across the Mediterranean is a 25 years old phenomenon, which started when Spain and Italy introduced Schengen visas for North Africans in 1991. This is also important. Today, it's no longer North Africans, but migrants from conflict-affected countries such as Syria, Somalia, and Africans. But it's already started. This is also another thing that I would like to stress. This also shows that the patterns of migration to Europe are continually changing. Not only routes, and also the migrant profiles are also changing. If you are looking at the reaction of the EU, then you'll see that they mainly try to manage irregular migration through increased border controls and also externalized policies. But these controls and policies have not stopped asylum seekers and other migrants from crossing borders. This is also what we see on the Aegean Sea side. The EU's most common reaction so far has been to fight against smuggling, which is not the solution, I guess. So, let's look at the main EU policies. We have seen increased maritime border patrolling over recent years. In 2006 and 2007, Frontex launched a coordinated operation called HERA. And then, in 2010, we have operation called RABBIT. It was launched to help Greece to guard their borders. In 2011, before the Syrian crisis, we have Frontex and its extended operation called Operation Poseidon Sea to the Greek islands in the Aegean Sea side. After the dramatic Lampedusa shipwreck in 2013, all of you will remember this event, Mare Nostrum was initiated by Italy. It was really very important initiation. It was a one-year-long military and humanitarian operation coordinated by the Italian Navy. It's really very important, and it is different than the Frontex operation because the aim of the Mare Nostrum was also rescue operation. It's different than the Frontex operation. But this operation was replaced by Frontex-led operation called Triton. So again, we have another military initiative. Again, you will remember the dramatic migrant shipwreck on April 2015. After this, the European Union launched another operation called European Union Naval Force Mediterranean. So these are the main measures that the European Union are taking with the help of the Frontex. As you will see that they are mostly based on border controls and securitization with the help of Frontex. Now, looking at the Syrian crisis. In April and May 2015, European Commission presented two important agendas. One is the European Agenda on Migration, and the second is the Action Plan on Migrant Smuggling. Both of these reports and both of those action plans are dealing with fighting against irregular migration. This is the main priorities which were set in these reports. And also, in addition to fighting with irregular migration, they also underlined cooperation with third countries. So in September 2015, 11 so-called hotspots were planned. The aim of the planned hotspots was just to provide operational support on the islands, Greek islands as you will remember, to ensure that arriving migrants are registered and to avoid that those registered migrants can't move to Europe. So therefore, 11 hotspots were introduced by the EU. Also, again in 2015, the relocation of 102,000 refugees was proposed. Coming to October 2015, we saw that Frontex declared to send close to 800 officers to those border regions, just to enforce the border controls and registration facilities. In addition to this 800 officers, they also proposed just to resettlement of the 80,000 refugees from Turkey to the EU. So the resettlement of 80,000 refugees from Turkey to Europe was also recommended by the EU. However, coming to December 2015, looking at the results of those proposals, we see that only 4 of the planned 11 hotspots were introduced. And only 500 Frontex officials were sent to the border regions. It was 800, Coming to the February 2016, the border between Greece and Macedonia has been partially closed, as you will see. And on October 2015 and March 2016, we have the famous joint action plan between Turkey and EU. So I think details of the joint action plan will be discussed by dearest Edith, and therefore I do not want to go into the details of this action plan. But the summary of those initiatives which were started with the Frontex and which were mainly based on fighting against irregular migration and also enhancing the border controls didn't change the migration flows towards Europe. They changed the routes. This is what I would like to mention. Now I would like to go into the details what I would like to say. With these policies, the EU expected to fight against irregular migration, to improve integrated border management and border controls, just to develop refugee registration and to distinguish between refugees and migrants, and to increase detention capacity in Turkey. However, these policies doesn't fill the gaps on the side of social and cultural integration of all migrants, asylum seekers and refugees, both in Turkey and in Europe. This is really very important. The evidence from my research suggests that for migrants, refugees, asylum seekers, and also asylum seekers, social media, as was mentioned, has developed into one of the main means of communication. Also, according to my research, not the routes, but certain hubs which have already emerged along the road to the destination countries are crucial for the migrants. Certain transit locations develop into main hubs due to their reputation as a marketplace for smuggling services. I'm sure you will remember Istanbul, and I'm sure you will think about Aksaray as one of the important central hubs for the smuggling services. Or if you think about the provincial coastal city like Izmir, you will remember Basmane. So these are the main hubs, which are including lots of communication facilities and new migrant networks for those people who are willing to use these services. And please be aware that those hubs are not only located in Turkey. Go to Athens, go to Rome, go to Aru. There you can easily find lots of hubs which are creating or which are involved, which are having lots of networks and communication centers providing lots of human smuggling networks. This is what I would like to say. So those hubs are providing strong communication networks and alternatives for the whole smuggling operation. That is to say, smuggling routes may shift and or change rather quickly due to the enhanced border control policies and operations on the whole region. Remember again the history. It's not so far away. In 2007 and in between 2007 and 2009, most of the migration flows, mostly used by smuggling services, were occurred again in the Eastern Mediterranean seaside. Then the operational Frontex that I mentioned in the beginning of my presentation were started. And afterwards, the flows didn't stop. The flows are shifted to the Thrace region. Mostly people started to migrate from the Turkish-Bulgarian and Turkish-Greek borders. It's not the end of the flows. This is what I highly emphasize. So, in that sense, hubs are the nodes connecting changing routes. So therefore, trying to understand the dissimilar social context of smuggling business is really very important. And saying that human smuggling is just a criminal organization is not valid according to my empirical research, because there are different type of organizational structures which is really very small, which is really very individual, which is really very flexible. So there are different type of organization. Therefore, the EU rhetoric of saying that human smuggling is a crime, organized crime, is not much, convincible according to my findings, especially on the case of Turkey. In Izmir, you have different organization. In Istanbul, you have different organization. Or on the southern border of Turkey, you may find different organization and structure, all of which are a little bit flexible, not much mafia type. This is also what I would like to say. In that sense, it's worth to underline that the enhanced border controls and externalized migration policies may only lead to shifting roads and changing methods, but not the elimination of irregular migration flows to the fortress Europe. This is what I would like to highlight so far. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ayşe Hanım. In sociology, we always say that we should go to field and see what data tells us. It's very important, and then your paper shows that your field work showed that human smuggling is not only an organized crime, but that it can be family business, small groups, or even individuals organized. And many years ago, in the 1990s, when I did my research and published a book, also I wrote a sentence, and the sentence was, there are shifts in the routes and hubs with the changing conditions, new policies and new measures. So human smugglers are really very flexible, whether it's a small enterprise or it is linked to organized crime. And now I'd like to invite the third speaker. Meltem Hamit. She's from IOM, Turkey, Senior Project Expert. The title of the speech is IOM's Approach and Strategy on Countering Migrant Smuggling. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. First of all, welcome to all. I would like to thank you for USAK for cooperating with IOM for organization of this panel and giving a floor to us as well. It's really honor for me to be a presenter with very valuable academics from Turkey. Let me first just remind my organization, International Organization for Migration. Maybe most of you know, but just in case. IOM is established in 1951. It's a leading intergovernmental organization in the field of migration. We have more than 160 member states and also observer states. We have offices more than 180 countries. IOM's main mission is based on the principle of humane and orderly migration benefits migrants and society. In this context, we are assisting our partners in meeting the growing operational challenges of migration management, advance understanding of migration issues, encourage social and economic development through migration, and uphold the human dignity and well-being of migrants. When we look at IOM Turkey, we have different service areas in Turkey. We opened our first office in Ankara in 1991. Turkey became the full member state of IOM in 2004. We have more than 200 staff all over Turkey. We have 4 offices in our main offices in Ankara. We have offices in Istanbul, Antep, Izmir, and we have also presence in Hatay, Şanlıurfa, and Adıyaman. And we are giving services and cooperating with different stakeholders in migration policy and research, counter-trafficking, labor migration, migration health, refugee and migrant resettlement and voluntary return, and technical cooperation on migration. After giving kind of short information on my organization, I want to return to the topic, to the migrant smuggling phenomenon. As already mentioned by the previous presenters, to begin with, we should say that when they do not have option to move regularly, then migrants seek the assistance of migrant smugglers. And consequently, migrant smugglers have become integral part of migration phenomenon as well, that we cannot neglect. And they do not only respond to demand, as already mentioned by Oğuzhan Hoca regarding to the PR strategies, etc., but they also actively create the demand and serving as accelerators of irregular migration. Reliance on smugglers, on the other hand, makes migrants particularly vulnerable to abuse and exploitation because we have different experiences and trajectories all over the world and testimonies of migrants that they also are facing with exploitation. As Osama just said, though this is not really this have not to be the case, as it is also a kind of business, as we accept or not. And many migrants pay with their lives while trying to be smuggled to other countries because they do not have any legal option to move regularly. When we look at the numbers, unfortunately, as of 26th of May, globally 1,827 people lost their lives worldwide. And as the most deadly route, as the most deadly sea, the Mediterranean, as of 27th of May, just this year, 1,075 people lost their lives in Mediterranean Sea. When we look at the numbers of last year more than 5,400 people lost their lives all over the world while trying to reach other countries through smugglers. And again, when we look at the profiles, this is also very important, that there are many vulnerable migrants who are on the move. According to the recent reports, 55% of women, 55% of people who reach Europe through Mediterranean and Western Balkan route were women and children. And when we look at the numbers, more than one in five was children who reached Europe. And when we look at the fatalities, 30% were children and infants. So when we think about the services of smuggling, we should also take into consideration these issues, I think. And it's, as already highlighted, in recent years, the link between migration, security and border management has been focus of much of the policy attention. In many parts of the world, this resulted in reinforcement of border controls, as already mentioned in detail by Vils Hoca. On the other hand, border controls cannot stop irregular migration, and there are limits also what democratic societies can do at their borders because of their international, also because of their responsibilities based on international law. There are limits what they can do in their borders. First of all, first and foremost, persons should not be deprived of their right to claim asylum or protection, whether they come regularly or irregularly. Being dedicated to promote safe, humane and orderly migration for the benefit of all, IOM advocates and actively supports a holistic migration policy approach, one that recognizes migration as a mega trend of this century. Migration is not only inevitable, but also necessary and desirable if well managed through sensible, humane and responsible policies. It should be underlined that migration is not a problem to be solved, but a reality to be managed as much as possible. For countering migrant smuggling, first of all, I would like to underline that for IOM, migrant smuggling, our basis for the definition of migrant smuggling is international law. That is to say, the complementary protocol to UN Transnational Organized Crime Convention, protocol against the smuggling of migrants by land, sea and air, which was ratified by 142 states up to now, including Turkey. According to the protocol, smuggling is the procurement in order to obtain directly or indirectly a financial or material benefit of the illegal entry of a state party of which the person is not a national or permanent resident. That is to say, if there is, I would like to underline that because especially last year's crisis, there were also many NGOs or humanitarian groups who are trying to help migrants to enter to their states without any material benefit. This is not smuggling. Smuggling crime includes direct or indirect material benefit, and this must be underlined, I think, because we should base our discussions according to the international law, I guess. This is the case, as also again, when we turn back to the protocol, smuggler is a criminal under international law, smuggled migrant is not. He or she is a subject of crime, he or she is mostly vulnerable, as I mentioned the profiles, and is not criminally liable for getting smuggled. So we should, when we are mentioning countering migrant smuggling, we should be very careful whether we are trying to combat with the smugglers or the migrants themselves. Migrants are not criminals, we should underline. And when we turn into the migrant smuggling phenomenon, it's a very complex issue in several ways, as already mentioned. When we're talking about the issue, we should when we look at the root causes, there are manifold root causes. It is a multi-layered international industry and has profound impacts on origin, transit and destination countries and on migrants themselves. There are different as most of the recent researchers already mentioned, there are different modalities, individual, groups, flexible, etc., but somehow they have the network all over the world. So in this terms, it is transnational. I can categorize like that. Also, migrant smuggling requires a coverage of a number of areas. such as protection of migrants, creating regular channels for migration, development of cooperation among states, labor migration health, border and law enforcement, as well as it is also the sovereign right of the state to also have the border and law enforcement in line with international legislation and international responsibilities. And it must be again underlined that there are no simple or easy policy solutions countering migrant smuggling. Only a comprehensive approach can cover all aspects successfully. And we need both preventative and remedial measures. As IOM, having worked and experienced in different parts of the world, in different thematic areas of migration, we have also a history of working with states and other partners to combat migrant smuggling. And especially with the recent upsurge in smuggling in many parts of the world, there is a strong case strengthening IOM activities in this sector. Since 2012, we are also including more theoretical dialogue discussion on the issue, and in January 2015, IOM's Director General called for a comprehensive plan preventing migrant smuggling and saving lives. I will mention this comprehensive approach, which is based within a wider context of human mobility in a globalized world and concurrent efforts to promote and support opportunities to migrate in safe and dignified manner. The IOM's comprehensive approach has main 4 pillars. The first one is providing protection and assistance to smuggled migrants. The second one is address the root causes of migrant smuggling by working towards discouraging migrants from seeking migrant smuggling services. The third one is enhancing states' capacity to develop and enforce policy, legislation, and the operational capability to disrupt, interdict, and prosecute migrant smugglers. And the fourth one is promote research and data collection to expand the knowledge base on migrant smuggling. To mention what these pillars include a little bit. As opposed to migrants' expectations for the safety of their journeys, as the numbers give very, very small reflection to our mind, migrants using smuggling networks are not always safely achieving to their goals. They may be exposed to exploitation, abuse, and even torture and sexual assault. In fact, at this point, I should underline that, for example, 2 weeks ago I was in Italy, Lampedusa, and though we don't have these detections yet, there are, as you already know, there are really many smuggled migrants now, and I can say that at least each day there are tens of trafficked ones as well among the smuggled migrants. So yes, in our cases we do not have too much identifications regarding the trafficking of these migrants being faced sexual exploitation, etc. But there are different modalities, at least I can say, in different parts of the world. So we need to take all this into consideration. And an underlying principle guiding IOM's intervention in counter-smuggling efforts is the protection of migrants' human rights. In this regard, our first pillar is on provide protection and assistance. IOM does not support initiatives that will have an adverse impact on human rights. Access to asylum and protection must be safeguarded, as I already mentioned. Migrants in countries of transit or destination must be able to access reception and immediate individualized assistance and or referral services, including health, psychosocial services based on individualized vulnerability screening. In this regard, IOM can and is assisting states in providing this humane, dignified and well-organized reception and immediate assistances, screening and all screening of vulnerabilities, also helping states for search and rescue operations. Although that for us detention must be a measure of last resort. Actively, we are also promoting alternatives to detention. We are also assisting migrants who are under detention, and also voluntary return and reintegration are under assistance to vulnerable migrants. Address to the root causes of migrant smuggling while working towards discouraging migrants from seeking migrant smuggling service. We have different activities combating with the drivers of migration, opening regular migration channels, because suppressing criminals smuggling activities without providing alternative means for movement for those with no choice other than flee will not work. And also raising awareness and information campaigns. We have also activities for assisting states in law and international cooperation for creating legal basis for prosecution of the migrant smugglers and disruption of their business model. I will not go to the details of the Pillar 3, which also includes the enhancement of law enforcement activities, but I want to just finalize with the promoting research and data collection to expand the knowledge base on migrant smuggling. Because migrant smuggling remains an underreported and under-researched aspect of migration. The lack of reliable, systematic, collected and available data can make it difficult to determine the precise magnitude of migrant smuggling at national, regional and global level. Thus, there is an immediate need to increase and strengthen collection, sharing and analysis of data and knowledge on migrant smuggling to assist in the development of evidence-based policies. And for this, we need migrant-centric research to be undertaken. In this regard, we are very much supportive of increasing the intellectual capacity on this and the promoting research on migrant smuggling phenomena. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Madam. Again, we learned a lot and a lot of information. Thank you for your very analytical presentation. So what we learned from your presentation, we need academics, policymakers, we need a comprehensive, holistic and multidimensional approach to study human smuggling. And also you mentioned human trafficking. In fact, my research also shows that, and the literature shows that, human smuggling and human trafficking go hand in hand. One is increasing, the other one is also increasing. Women and children are more vulnerable to risks, as you mentioned, and then the majority of the people are dying, women and children, in the case of Syrian crisis. Also, when we look at human trafficking, women are children, again, they are the target of the traffickers. Of course, the difference between smuggling and maybe trafficking should be mentioned here. In the case of smuggling, the person who is smuggled has the consent, pays certain amount of money, but in the case of trafficking, the person is forced, deceived to cross the border, and then later on this trafficked person is used for sexual exploitation. And later, after the four speakers, I will make a small summary again, but now I don't want to spend more time and invite the fourth speaker, Elif Özmenek Çarmıklı. She is the director of USAK Center for Social Studies. The title is the EU TR Joint Action Plan and Migrant Smuggling. Of course, the action plan is very important in combating human smuggling. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Professor Narda. First of all, I would like to welcome you one more time. Once again, it's a great privilege to be a panelist in front of such a distinguished audience. And also, I would like to thank IOM for sponsoring this panel. And also, I would like to thank, once you get the microphone, you do all your things, but I really have to thank to my group, my assistants, who really helped a lot to publish this report, Umay, Esma, and Eser, and of course our academic contributors. As our president already mentioned, this panel is a follow-up to our recent report. We thought this report will be a timely one because everybody is talking about the Turkey-EU Joint Action Plan or the deal, but nobody is really talking about what the consequences of that will be in terms of dealing with the other side of the refugee crisis, which is migrant smuggling. So my colleagues quite clearly, outline some of the features of the migrant smuggling sector in Turkey. So from here on, I would like to open up a discussion on how we can frame the Turkey-EU deal in dealing with human smuggling. I say open up it for discussion because, as you all very know, it's still a very living process and every day we see changes. We don't even know if the deal will go on. However, until today, what do we see? We see since April the passage rate from Turkey to Europe fell down by 90%. New figures by IOM, actually recent numbers, show that no asylum seekers were reported to drown this month so far, passing from Turkey to EU. So what these numbers really show us, the figures? Well, I try to analyze this in 5 different points. One, combating human smuggling requires not only law enforcement, legal measures, but also political will. The second one, combating human smuggling is one of the major areas which the effectiveness of the deal, Turkey-EU deal, will be measured, unfortunately. 3, human smuggling is a topic where serious mutual mistrust between Turkey and EU when it comes to cooperating on border control manifests itself. While Turkey takes every occasion to claim that the EU sees Turkey as a buffer state, the EU expresses that Turkey turns a blind eye to human smugglers. So it's a huge area where this trust is usually generated constantly. And fourth one is international cooperation is vital in combating human smuggling. And the fifth one, Turkey-EU deal, offers key instruments really in combating human smuggling. However, we should also remember migrants are also at the stage where they are strategically waiting to see what is going to happen. So, in the short term, actually the deal offers some key instruments combating with human smuggling. The first one is, of course, return of irregular migrants to Turkey. And the second one is the resettlement mechanisms to prioritize of migrants who have not entered the EU irregularly or try to enter the EU. Although these 2 instruments seem very preventive in the short term, we all know that these are very problematic in terms of refugee law, international law. So it's going to be, it's going to be a combination of the other 5 points that I made already. If they come together, then the deal would make more sense, because otherwise we're going to have a lot of international refugee law problems. So, what do we see here? Due to the short time we have, for the sake of being more precise, I would like to refer to our report and talk about the 2 different questions that we highlighted in the report. One, as a result of the measures taken within the framework of the deal, how might migration routes as well as the nature of the migration human smuggling business can change? I mean, my colleagues already mentioned the changes, but I also want to highlight 2 changes that we predict. One is with regard to the routes. The second one is the organization of the sector. Both Oğuzhan Hoca and Giriz Hoca already mentioned the route will change. We know that. The literature shows us if you close one door, they will find another route. So what we see already, the utilization of Central Mediterranean route. However, it's quite interesting. I look at the numbers right before this panel, and I see that just this month, we see the revival of the Central Mediterranean route, and the numbers in May, actually, in April, the numbers reaching to Italy was 9,149, and in May, the number reached to 18,000, yeah, 18,800 something, 18,800. So it almost doubled. And when we look at the profile of the people who are moving, it's quite interesting. It's not the Syrians who are moving, or Afghans, or Iraqis. It's mostly Nigerians, Gambians, and Somalians, mostly Africans who are moving. So this shows us actually, if you close some door, not only the rules are changing, but the demographics of the group is changing because they are feeling very threatened that they may not be able to reach to Europe if this Turkey deal really works, because it becomes an example to other third countries. So people are scared about that. And the second part of the question was the organization. The rules are changing, and we might actually see, if the deal goes on in Turkey, we might see some other utilization of Eastern Mediterranean route. Like instead of Izmir, now the centers or the hubs can actually shift towards Mersin or Antalya, and we can see the utilization of Eastern Mediterranean route. And we're seeing some examples of that, and in the field we've been hearing that human smugglers are actually working on the new routes. And the second option probably they have is they might use the land routes, even the Balkan routes are closed. Now they might actually target to go further down to Central Europe. This will be more risky, more dangerous for both the smugglers and the migrants themselves, but it's still doable. And so the Mediterranean Sea is a riskier, of course, route than the Aegean one. It's longer, it's an open sea. So we will see the difference in organization as well. The vessels that we use would be probably will change too. So we're predicting that if the deal goes on, there will definitely be changes in the routes and in the organization of the sector. So there are several changes that the EU-Turkey deal face because of the instruments. As I said earlier, one is the human rights issues. But the second one is more political. And this brings me to my second question, which is the question that I've been asked to all the seminars, panels, workshops that I've attended lately, and that is, what if June deadline for visa liberalization fails? So, as you all probably watched it very closely, both sides talk in a very pessimistic manner about the future of the deal. Just to give an overview, Turkish side states that they have passed their exam and they stopped irregular passages and started the readmission agreement. And Ankara has warned that it will drop the deal unless the EU introduces visa-free travel for its citizens. And country's foreign minister also ruled out changes to terror law, arguing that Turkey's needs are unique. And according to Foreign Minister Çavuşoğlu, Turkey had taken more than 400 refugees under the deal, while only 130 Syrians from the Turkish camps had been so far resettled. So they're saying, as a bottom line, they're saying now it's EU's turn to do its homework. However, the EU side, from the beginning, these criteria were already known by the Turkish side. The bloc said they wouldn't grant Turkey visa-free travel until 5 outstanding conditions were met. This morning, I think it was in the news, we were watching Mr. Yankır as much as we're watching the Turkish politicians nowadays. He said Turkey has only 2 conditions left to meet. So at this point, as an analyst, I have to take the risk and say, as opposed to many pundits who are very pessimistic about the deal, I'm not that pessimistic, and I'm hoping that I will be right at the end of the day. Because I believe that two sides really need each other. And Ms. Merkel actually stated the same thing this morning. So, and also we know that according to the diplomatic sources, I'm not just making a prediction, I'm just kind of trying to reading the lines reading between the lines in the news. What gives me hope is, according to the diplomatic sources, two sides agrees to hold expert level talks next week followed by another meeting between Çavuşoğlu, Çelik, and Timmermans. They also underlined that all these efforts will be followed by another leader-level meeting in the coming weeks. So what I am seeing actually, even at the political arena, this becomes a disputable issue. I see that both sides are taking a step back and kind of remembering it's the lives of millions of people that we're talking about. So this game really started in a very wrong way, as you probably know. Just to give a brief glimpse of this wrong starting, we're seeing that EU's security-oriented approach in this statement. And the statement goes like this: the Commission delivers on its commitment to speed up the implementation of the facility, announcing that 20 million euros to increase the capacity of the Turkish Coast Guard and 27 million euros to facilitate the refugees' access to education. I mean, we're dealing with 3 million people and you're devoting 20 million euros to increase the capacity of the Turkish Coast Guard, and only 27 million to the education of the refugees. So let me make one thing very clear. Human smuggling networks will survive longer than the EU-Turkey deal if the EU leaders and the Turkish leaders do not understand if the integration process doesn't work quickly and smoothly, we will have more problems in a very near future. So we're seeing that two sides are at this point trying to depoliticize the issue and taking a step back, and that's where my prediction is coming from, and I really hope that that will be the case. So if visa liberalization does go ahead, then there are arguments saying that Europe could actually lose much of its leverage over Turkey. I'm not really sure about that, but I have to underline that the EU should keep in mind its transformative power on Turkey. If Turkey today has a migration management more mannerly way, this is due to the Europeanization process that it went through. Where we have a separate directorate who's dealing with migration issues. This is a huge transformation in Turkey, and this was due to EU's transformative power. So the question goes, what if the deal fails? Are we going to see something like we saw last summer, the summer of 2015? Well, some people say, we have NATO ships in the water now, so it will be more difficult to have that kind of a mobilization, which I totally disagree, because it looks like they don't have the enforcement like any police or coastal guard would have, and it's their existence there is more symbolic than a physical force. So with these points, actually, I would like to leave the floor to many discussions, because I think even my presentations had a lot of questions in itself. What might be the changes in the routes if the deal goes on? What will we see if the deal fails? I would be more than happy to hear what the other panelists would say. Thank you very much.
Elif Hanım, thank you very much. In scientific investigation, what is important is to formulate the right research question, and you have given us two important questions. And when I look at your presentation, one of the points highlighted is the importance of the political will. Because what happened after the Turkey-EU deal, there is a dramatic decrease in the number of the smuggling and in the number of the passage right dropped dramatically. And when I look at your questions, what will happen if Turkey-EU fails? Of course, one of the predictions is that there will be more increase in human smuggling, but also it is going to create big disappointment for the Syrian migrants, or how we call them, migrants under the, people under the temporary protection, Syrian people living in Turkey. They are not refugee. Their status is also defined differently. They are under the temporary protection because why they are going to have a big disappointment. They have big expectations from Turkey-EU deal, and one of the important problems of Syrian refugees, again our research shows, and that the growing literature on the Syrian refugees shows that, I use the term refugee, the majority of the Syrians in Turkey, they are children and young people, they need education, so their integration into the education system is important and it is very costly. They need to learn Turkish and then they need schools, large number of teachers, school and developing of the curriculum. And then this is why they are waiting good results from the Turkish-EU deal. And many of the Syrian children are working illegally because they need to bring money to home. Even children in the age group of 10 to 15, they are working. The new research showed that 400,000 Syrian children are working illegally. This is a huge number. And children outside the school working illegally in the future, it is going to be a huge human cost. And their life will be destroyed, but also they can be part of the criminal networks. And so I don't want to draw a very pessimistic picture, but I just want to underline the importance of the Turkey-EU deal. It has consequences for domestic politics, Turkish-EU relations, and for the human smuggling and the future of the Syrians living in Turkey. And now I'd like to open the floor to discussion, questions, and comments. We have limited time. Then at the end, I can make again a small summary. Thank you very much. And now I'd like to invite people. Please, may I also please give your name?
Yes, my name is Jasper Mortimer. I'm a journalist with France 24 Television. To Meltem Hamid and Elif Sharnikli, first a detail. Could you give me the daily passage from Turkey to Greece at the moment? In March, February, it was about 2,000, 2,500. Elif says latest IOM figures say it's fallen to 90%, which would suggest it's now about 250, but I'll be corrected by you. Secondly, I've been astonished that when only 400 migrants have been sent back, and most of those were sent back in the first fortnight of April, that the passage from Turkey to Greece has fallen so dramatically. I mean, if I was a Syrian migrant in Turkey, desperate to go into the EU, I would not be greatly deterred by the fact that only 400 people have been sent back in the last 2 months. Can you tell us why this deal appears to have been so effective?
Thank you very much for the questions. Regarding to the daily passages, in fact now even it is, as far as we know the apprehensions or rescues, of course, the daily ones from the Turkish Coast Guard. And in fact it is even seems that the daily number is even less than 200, maybe 50s or 60s. That much decrease, in fact. In some days, in some days maybe more, but yes, we can say that when we look at the periods, all of the periods together and give a approximate amount, we can say 200. But when you look daily, day by day, you will see even much less numbers.
Yes.
Regarding to the how it comes that just with 400 migrants, this plan is being perceived as successful, that the passages are stopped. In fact, both the migrants and of course the smugglers are also have their agencies and discretions, plans, strategies, maneuvers, etc., etc. I strongly believe that they are now also trying to see what is going on. What will be done for the ones who will return back? For example, last week in Greece, Syrian refugee win the appeal, and according to the appeal decision of the Greek court, this Syrian cannot be returned back to Turkey, even if there is an agreement, because it is not in line with international protection, international law. As Turkey is, according to the decision of the court, as Turkey is not a safe third country. So I think they are also, it is only maybe a kind of transitional or waiting period. So they are also, people give money and people make an investment, so maybe they will, they prefer also to just see what is going on a bit, and then we know that there are many people still in many hubs just staying there.
So it's a wait and see time.
I think so, yes.
Thank you.
And also, they don't want to give money to smugglers. You know, it's a lot of money. You have to pay like 3,000 euros to pass. And if you don't know if you're not going to arrive, and if you are going to arrive, they're going to return you. Why would you pay that much money? They're already having financial problems right now. That's one thing. The other one is, I think, black marketing of the EU. The EU countries are doing a good job of black marketing themselves. They keep saying, this is a horrible place, don't come here, the camps are really bad. Sweden is a really horrible place, Denmark is already not a very good one either. So this black marketing really works. And also, there are news coming from the camps, the ones especially in Europe, and they're hearing they're not treated very well in there. So people are thinking maybe we will be really better off here in Turkey, because they at least don't have to go to the camps. Because now the camp also, the people in the camps, the number are getting over in Turkey.
Thank you.
And one more thing is I think the Balkan route, the closure of Balkan route, that really made a great difference, because they knew that, they now know that even if they arrive to one of the Greek islands, it would be much harder to move into the inner side of the central part of Europe. So that really made a difference as well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question and answers. Please.
Hi, my name is Tahsin Şensoy from International Association for Security Studies and Friendship. My question to Elif Hoca, as you mentioned, there are some challenges on implementation of EU-Turkey refugee deal, mostly concentrated on visa liberalization. But partly Meltem Hanım mentioned that there is a court decision in Greek. Decision says in some Turkey is not safe for refugees, and send them back then to Turkey is illegal in terms of EU legislation or international legislation. What do you think? How this court decision will affect implementation of EU-Turkey refugee deal?
Well, one of the major problems of this whole deal, I think it's all constructed on closing the holes. Like they have not a vague idea of what should be done, and they kind of think that they can close the holes as they go. This is the attitude that the EU has right now. So if the implementation goes through, we don't even know that, but I think they will try to find ways of closing those holes. So I'm a little pessimistic about that it will affect the implementation. They will find a way of doing it, but at the end of the day, they will face some charges, I think, and Turkey would be getting its own share from that the court decisions, I believe.